was too, fella, and I served 2 years. I know what it's about.
I have a son that's going to go into the Army.
We fight because we must fight if we're to live in a world where every country can shape its own destiny. We will not be defeated.
In the spring of 1969, 4 years after the first ground combat troops landed in Da Nang, there are more than 500,000 U.S. troops in Vietnam. But the war that once garnered the vast majority of America's support has drastically changed. Years of growing frustration over a military strategy that focuses on enemy bodies instead of territory has caused public support to plummet. And for the first time, the American soldiers in Vietnam are feeling the effects of the anti-war movement at home. Having run on a campaign pledge of peace with honor, 6 months after taking office, President Nixon meets with South Vietnamese President Nguyen Van Thieu and announces his plan to end American involvement in Vietnam.
After 5 years in which more and more Americans have been sent to Vietnam, we finally have reached the point where we can begin to bring Americans home from Vietnam.
The U.S. military now begins the long and complicated process of withdrawing American troops and training the South Vietnamese to take over full combat responsibilities. The strategy is called Vietnamization.
And minds aren't here. They're back home, where most of us think we belong.
24-year-old Don DeVore is an artilleryman with the 1st Infantry Division stationed at Firebase Gym, just north of Saigon. 9 months earlier, DeVore received his draft notice at the same time his wife found out she was pregnant.
Last fall, when my wife told me she was pregnant and I got my draft notice, I recall being
violently sick to my stomach. I mean, it was just an awful feeling. I had no desire to go into the service. I had no desire to probably have to go to Vietnam. We all really had the same mission. Let's get this over with.
Let's stay safe, and let's get back home to our families. Because we all know we're trying to get the hell out of here. And none of us wants to be the last guy to die for a lost cause. Vietnam.
Everyone's on edge. Bad enough that we're out here in the middle of this crap. Now on top of that, we've got these damn ARVN hanging over our shoulders.
Gary Benedetti is a 24-year-old coxswain in the Brown Water Navy. As part of the Vietnamization process, He and his fellow sailors are training the South Vietnamese to operate U.S. boats and weapons in the Mekong Delta. With over 3,000 miles of twisting rivers, streams, and canals, the Delta is a watery version of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, used by enemy soldiers to move men, weapons, and supplies into the South. It's also home to over half the population of South Vietnam, an estimated 8 million people, and produces nearly 70% of the country's rice, making it one of the most highly contested areas in South Vietnam.
I don't know how the hell we're supposed to teach these guys to take over for us. I mean, our Navy's been out on these rivers for years trying to stop the Viet Cong, and we're still having a hell of a time. If you ask me, from my perspective, and from the perspective of a lot of guys
I worked with on the rivers, it didn't seem to be that good of an idea. What it was is lack of knowledge of the boat. I mean, they're brought up in rice paddies. They can shoot. You know, a farmer can shoot, but he can also fix a tractor. These guys didn't have tractors. They had water buffalo. So to put them on
a piece of machinery,
you
can't do it. Especially out here, in the middle of all this. I mean, the VC ambush us every chance they get. When that happens, it takes everything we got just to stop it. Forget about winning. It's gonna take everything they got just to survive.
Hello, Daddy. This is Debbie. How are you today? When you have time, will you...
Hello, Dad. This is David, and I'd just like to tell you a few things that happened. I don't have too many things to say.
I like to get them. That's what makes me want to write back. Okay? See ya. Goodbye.
Remember that I love you with all my heart. I miss you with all my heart. And I hope we never have to be separated again. Just hope that the war can be over. Take care. I love you.
Ann Purcell's husband, Ben, has been missing in action in Vietnam for 13 months, ever since the helicopter he was riding in was shot down. Since then, she and her 5 children have had no contact with him and no information as to whether or not he is still alive.
I haven't listened to Ben's tape since he went missing. It's far too painful. But he is still all I ever think about. Most mornings, it's a struggle to get out of bed. If it weren't for the children, I probably wouldn't even bother. So when the military liaison officer called
and said, "May I come out?" And I said, "Sure." And so he came out and handed me a little piece of paper, and it said, "Your husband's status is being changed from missing in action to POW because a Viet Cong soldier has been captured, and on him he had all the interrogation papers of the men that were aboard the helicopter."
As I run outside to tell the children, I'm suddenly overcome with the sheer, simple beauty of the day. It's as if I've spent the last year seeing the entire world through a dark gray veil. And now, finally, that gray is gone. Of course, I realize that none of this means Ben is still alive. A lot could have happened in the last 13 months. But still, I feel like I finally got something to hold on to. I've got hope.
To describe this place, other than Woodstock, is one weird, wild place. And I'm loving every minute of it.
Don DeVore's world has quickly changed. 3 days ago, he was in Vietnam. Now he's home on emergency leave because his wife went into early labor. She and the baby are fine, but his sleepy hometown has undergone quite a change.
I got
All the
on
roads
Route
around
17.
here were like
it was a parking lot.
lot.
I thought perhaps there was an accident or something, but it was just so many cars there. I couldn't believe it. I turned on the radio, and they were reporting on Woodstock. So I called some friends
who lived nearby
in the area,
and they came over and
said,
well, let's go to Woodstock.
Well, come on, all of you big, strong men. Uncle Sam needs help again. Got himself in a terrible jam way down yonder in Vietnam. Put down your books, pick up a gun. I'm gonna have
Other than being the only guy with short hair, I feel like I fit in here way better than I ever did in Vietnam.
Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next up is Vietnam.
It just didn't resonate with Vietnam. They're these two separate worlds, you know? But as much as I try to push it out of my mind, I know none of this is gonna last. A couple of days when this leaves over, Woodstock, my family, and my brand new baby will all be a distant memory. Because I'll be back in Vietnam. Every day here is the same as it was before I left. We send out round after round for hours at a time, and then we sit back and wait, bored out of our minds, until it starts again.
After a week in the U.S., Don DeVore is back at Firebase Gym. He and his fellow soldiers have just learned that Ho Chi Minh, the communist leader of North Vietnam, has died.
They're saying we're supposed to have a ceasefire in honor of Ho's death, but we all learned from Tet that ceasefires don't mean shit.